Hey everyone, welcome back. In today's video, I want to touch on the relationship of coastal proximity and new construction communities within the Southwest Gulf Coast part of the state. I thought of this topic this week because I've been talking to a lot of people lately, and it seems like the majority started to shift and hedge. I'm a little bit removed from these storms now, is saying we don't want to be on top of the beach necessarily. Most people, I mean, it's not wanting, I guess but are you willing to sacrifice the trade-offs that go with that? Most people, they're going to be like 1-3 miles or less to the beach. For the most part, it's like luxury condominiums. It's older condominiums that have assessments and all the stuff you're dealing with. But it's a fee-ridden area. If you go single family on Barrier Island, the scarcity is even higher. So the competitiveness and the cost, and even if you have the money, it might not be worth all of that just to get there. Where I see people actually shopping is really in a 7 to 12 mile range, honestly, like maybe just west of the interstate or just beyond it. You can even stretch it to 15 miles, where in these worlds, you get maybe the best of the new construction suburbs. You get more space, you get more amenities, you get the cooler districts. Like a lot of the downtowns and stuff in the suburbs are built lower as well. But then also you're in that 18, depends who's driving, 25-minute range, 30-minute range even, versus 45, 50, 60 minutes, where you're not really feel like it's a quick jaunt over to the coast all the time. So there's a few interesting areas right now. If you include all of Southwest Florida, it's very heavy density in Sarasota greater, even if you're considering all the areas, just in new construction where it's based right now. But there's a little bit in Tampa Bay, even a little bit more in the Naples area, that I just want to highlight my thoughts on them. These are districts, these are individual communities, and I'll just tell you what I think about them and what's going on right now. At any point, of course, throughout this video, feel free to reach out if you want more information. I have a full residential real estate team across the state of Florida, but especially in the Southwest area. And we like just hawk these kind of first to know areas. If we can help you in any way, please consider reaching out. We have free guides on the website and a great email list as well. But I hope you enjoy the take, and let's get started. All right, I want to start things off with a bang and talk about the Waterside district in Lakewood Ranch, Florida. And before you're like, Lakewood Ranch, Florida is nowhere near the beach, hear me out for just a second. The fact of the matter is, in my experience, most people, regardless of where you start and how excited you are about getting really close to the water, if the closer you get, the more siloed individual single communities that aren't related to each other gets abundant. And then communities in general just aren't abundant. So you have a handful of options, which maybe work for you, but if they don't, you're disappointed because there's not a plan B, there's not a plan C. Getting in a district that's a group of communities, one provides variety potentially. So say you have a criteria that works for a lot of communities, but you have availability, you have lot selection, you have timing. It simply might not work. And it happens to a lot of folks. So you get variety, but you also get where if there's a group of 5, 6, 7, 8 neighborhoods together, then they'll put maybe a downtown, some sort of town center. You get communal amenities. And I think those are a couple of the perks. Waterside is one where it just happens to be on that steroids because it's the most southwestern part of one of the number one master plan suburb that's multi-generational in the United States. So you have one of the biggest suburbs that you can call it master plan, but it's like a city. You write Lakewood Ranch on your address or Bradenton in most part. They opened this new part that's the first area that's in Sarasota County. This is I'm not going to get crazy in this video, but this is a game about going this direction. If we're on the correct orientation of the camera here, you got to get down to Fruitville and cut over, because your beach you want to be close to here is really Lido Key. One of my favorites personally, but Siesta Key is lower than that. Longboat Key is above it. That's really where you're doing your miles too. Not all the neighborhoods, but a group of these neighborhoods sits in the like 11-ish, maybe a little bit lower, to 15-mile worst case range. And it's interesting because if it works for you, then Waterside Place is like a proper downtown. Downtown Lakewood Ranch is right down the street. Center Point, University Town Center, you have a lot of options. So let me rattle these off real quick. It's interesting timing-wise. There's a handful of communities, and you have to be cognizant of how long they've existed, because they're all not brand new, but they are all new construction. So the Alcove is one of the closest communities in this entire area because of the angle of it. But the Alcove at Waterside is Neil's signature. It's 46 total homes. It's not amenity rich. It's just more of, you wanted a semi-custom home, because regular Neil communities, Taylor Morrison, these aren't considered semi-custom. They're not going to really change things. You have to fit it in a box. Some will do more than that. And Neil's signature is one of those brands. Medallion does stuff like that. A little bit with Homes by Town, that kind of thing. That's a very niche option, but if you want a nice, beautiful home, you don't care about amenities, you're going to use the town. That's an option. The reason that's interesting is because then you have communities like Avanti, which shares a lake with it, which is Pulte, It's way more no frills, a lot of smaller homes in there, like really small single families. They're almost the size of villas, but interesting for investment potentially or less space, partial year residency. So there's two of them. Emerald Landing's another one that's right in that conversation too, also on the water. One of the most walkable communities that you could be in Waterside. And it's interesting because it's David Weekley's basically almost like their central living division, where David Weekley, which is like a kind of like a neo communities type of style and aesthetic when it comes to single family homes. They do this like long and lean product where it's like villas with lofts. It's 3-story single family homes that sit on narrow lots. They look real urban, and it fits this district because it's coastal urban. So that could be kind of a peacock of an option. You're getting what I'm saying here, because every single one's not quite perfect. There's a little bit cool here, might not work, might work. So you might need all 7, 8 to compare to make a decision. Nautique at Waterside is like an MI, really townhome heavy with some single families. MI did Oasis in Wellen Park in the old district. They did Sweetwater and Lakewood Ranch. So you could go around and find out similar examples to them. Kingfisher Estates is really niche, but John Cannon luxury. There's like 13 total homes. Shoreview, one of the first communities ever built in Waterside. That's Pulte. So that's like timing wise, it's like end. There's only like 250 homes in that whole thing. Lake House Cove was Homes by Town and a couple custom friends. Again, that one is also a community that's existed for 3-4 years now. But interesting option. It was on like the sexy lakes everybody wanted at the beginning. This is a conversation that Windward might be interesting for you. Windward by Neil Communities goes in and out of favor because people like don't even consider it part of Waterside, but they put it in a location that's one of the closest in all of Lakewood Ranch to town. And I feel like it's like leaning back into favor. If you can find some availability in there in the current market that's a little softer, then you might be able to find an interesting opportunity. And then the last one, so these all sit in that like, they're starting to creep, right? Most are going to sit in like the 11, 12 and a half-ish mile range one way, which in Sarasota, because of the city road grid, is going to probably realistically put you 29, 33 minutes one way to Lido Key, like crossing the bridge and everything. Shellstone's probably the newest in this entire conversation as far as availability and everything. So Homes by Town, which is like a Toll Brothers level builder as far as like just broad brush, built Lake House Cove, developed that one. And then this is their next one. So it's right now it's Homes by Town and it's Lee Weatherington. Beautiful lake, shares the lake with Wild Blue, but because it's lower, I might not consider Wild Blue within driving distance to the beach realistically, but Shellstone is, and they just split a lake. It's just because of where they're based. And it's eye of the beholder. But Shellstone is gonna provide like large, nice, beautiful single families. They've also put out a villa collection that starts in the 5 that I think is underrated. They make a really nice small home. They're doing all the models that were on the front row of the Lake House Cove community. Like the Weatherington wasn't there, but that's their large single family. But you had the Talon, you had the Fairlead, the Outrigger was their main model. All of those models they're building in here plus more. I think that's a really interesting one right now. One of our reps, a good buddy of mine, Jeffrey Cave, you might have come in contact with him if you've ever called us. He has moved over there now. He's representing Homes by Town, so we work together. So it's almost like the best of both worlds. But Waterside is a district that I think if you don't buy there, you still compare there. It's it's really unique to the state of Florida. So that's my number one. Okay, let me hit another kind of district area before we move on to individual communities that get you a little closer, but they're by themselves. And that's in Park, Florida. That's another one that if you're shopping master plan in the state of Florida right now, it's in the conversation across the board. This was the idea that it basically you had this West Villages district that existed back in the day with a handful of communities, really popular for retirement. But Venice basically is like the southern version of Sarasota. So it's a little bit slower, a little bit cheaper, and it's like a laid back old Florida kind of coastal town. Well, typically you don't get a lot of new construction in those areas. And if you don't get them as they relate to each other, somehow they carved out this new Playmore district that basically puts you really low. So it gives you approximately like 4 beaches really, and then it's a lot smaller than Lakewood Ranch. So if you come in town and you're shopping, a lot of times I'll take people in these 2 directions. What's really like this. And that juxtaposition then squeezes where the third thing you need to know is Sarasota, which sits in the middle. Then it's even easier to educate you on Naples and lower Tampa Bay because these look like a thing. You get over there, you're like, you feel what it feels like. You say, okay, there's 9 neighborhoods to pick from, what might work for me, that kind of thing. 2 communities I like in general right now, I would just want to highlight. Palmyra, I'm still hot on Palmyra. This is really interesting because you have this group of mixed builders that I haven't seen all together in the same room before. And they're all like And beyond David Weekly, they're all pretty much like actively selling at the moment, but you got a lot of options. So you got David Weekly doing single families in here, Homes by Town, which I just mentioned, at Shellstone. ICI is going to do like a more luxury product. It looks a lot like the last phase of the Lake Club, a little bit in aesthetic. MI Homes is going to do like the townhome product that a lot of people really like, and larger single families. You're going to see Madame in here, who built Brightmoor, the 55 and up. They built Sunstone in, which I still think is interesting right now, in Wellen Park. They also built across the street in the old phase. They're involved in development a lot. Neil Community is in here. So you come in and you got really nice amenities. You have multiple builders to pick from. This is a very good sized community. They have a western expansion, and it sits in an area that is 11 miles one way to Manasota Key Beach, because you're in basically northern Englewood here. But then also above you is downtown Venice Island, which is kind of a lovely, quaint area. But you have Venice Beach, Casperson, which is the Shark's Tooth capital, and Brohard, the only dog beach in the county. If you're any of these neighborhoods over here, for the most part, we're at that angle, because you're basically like this. You're going Minnesota's like parallel if you get low enough, which is interesting because it adds that whole element. Fishing and all that's really good there. And then you're going up this way to downtown Venice Island. Entire thing's 45 minutes one way of downtown Sarasota. But Palmyra has legs. It's new, just released. A lot of what people love about all these different communities that are spread across Sarasota, they've shoved in this one area. And it's also one of the closest to the beach in the entire area. So I like that. Throw in Park Golf and Country Club. This is Lennar doing Lennar stuff. It's golf, but you don't have to golf, which gives you the amazing amenities that would come with a golf club community. Affordability in perspective, because it's Lennar, it's a big spec builder. They're doing condos and their single family products in here. You've seen this with Sarasota National. We've seen this with Lakewood National. We've seen this with Bonita National. Babcock Ranch has these in here. You know, you could go around Florida, Calusa. There's a new one up in Lakewood. But those are two I would like to highlight. Once you start getting, the cool thing about this is like what I would always describe it as is that you need to basically find a way to learn the area that's like the most appropriate for you. There's certain things you can do out of town or you should do out of town that you could also do in town, but you shouldn't. And when you come into town, you really need to be like, we don't know. Like only it's like, how is 11 miles close to the beach for you? It depends where you live now. It depends what you've done your whole life. When you get over to Lakewood Ranch versus Wellen Park, 100% of people, it's a binary thing. They know right away. This is for me. It's not for me. But it's everything. It's the drive over there. It's depending on where you're staying. It's how these communities relate to each other. It's the walkability. But once you do that, then you're like, cool. That's why I just use these as talking head examples, because timing always moves. Communities always are being added. Communities are always being sold out. But you need to say, okay, yeah, Plainmoor is a really good example. Like the idea of the geography and everything, what else should I look at? And I think that's a great way to go. So Wellen Park is another one I would really highlight. Okay, just for juxtaposition's sake, before I kind of hop around and give you more creative options, the one other thing I do if you're going to shop Sarasota Manatee would be you go Lakewood, you go Wellen, and then you say what's in between. And the really in between area you want to hone in on to learn is where Sky Ranch is based. There's going to be High Hat Ranch behind it. You have Grand Park with Neil over there as well. But Sky Ranch is this multifaceted Taylor Morrison community. What this does for you is it gives you don't have a huge district yet that's like a Waterside place or a downtown Wellen, but you are central Sarasota. So a lot of these communities are above or under the heart of Sarasota. What this does is put you parallel with Siesta Key Beach. And I know that's on a lot of people's radar. So you're about 13 miles and it's just a direct shot over there. There's two entrances to Siesta Key. Siesta Key is where like my family's at. That's the area that I was more in, the South Sarasota area growing up. If you're below it, you go Stickney Point Bridge. If you're above it, you're on the Northern Bridge, which is the 6-mile bridge to downtown Sarasota. But the thing is, if you get too far out of whack, you get too far east, you get too far south in Palmer Ranch, you're awkward because like you got to go up and around, that kind of thing. So that's what I look at that. I think they've put in more affordable townhome products in there. Cassia is like a more family-friendly brand. The Esplanade brand that a lot of people really like there. Say you're not a golfer and you loved the old Esplanade in Palmer Ranch, you love the Zario up in Lakewood Ranch and that kind of thing. This is one of the only options right now. You could do the Bahama Bar in the future. You could get that Lazio model that you might like or that Palazzo model you might like, but not have to deal with all the golf stuff and also be in Sarasota, not 45 minutes one way to the beach. So that's what third one I would look at just for a sanity check. All right, now maybe the fun stuff. And the low-hanging fruit in this conversation is a community called SeaFlower. So we're still in the greater Sarasota area. SeaFlower is a divide from what we've seen in most of the past. This is a community that you have 1,200 acres from a defunct flower farm, hence the SeaFlower name. that's building a master plan outfit, but they're doing it in north of downtown Sarasota, but staying west. So we always see east. We don't see it going west very often. And what this does is it puts new construction communities in a amazing geography that typically suffered in the past from lack of consistency. So you put a really beautiful medallion community called Aqua with a freshwater lagoon up there right above IMG Academy. But then across the street, you're going to see modular homes. You're going to see inconsistencies as far as price points, style. That's what Western Bradenton is. Coastal Bradenton. It's historic and it's for good or bad, like urban thoroughfares. They're not as turnkey as the suburbs. And a lot of people like that. It's really the eye of the beholder. But what SeaFlower does, it adds the element of building kind of like a mini city, which insulates it, which gives people more comfortability of if you dropped a waterside or a master plan area of a bunch of communities in any location really with the right landscaping and then you can unlock that geography because you're like, okay, if I spend money here, there's 500, 600, 1,200 other homes going to be sold here. It's going to normalize me. It's going to get my equity in the right position or whatever. If that makes sense. If you shop Western Bradenton at all, this will make total sense to you. They've put random communities there many times in the past, up in Palma Sol and all that kind of thing. What they haven't done is they haven't added all the communal amenities and the stuff that people want in 2025. They're doing that. So 1,175 acres, you're going to have Cardell Homes in here, David Weekley, Issa Homes, going to do a luxury product, 85 plus foot lots. Pulte's in here, MI Homes are in here. Pulte is the other one that just very recently, as of last week, released floor plans and pricing. So they're going to do something very similar in like style to what I would liken to Sapphire Point up in Lakewood Ranch. You're going to have a village center and then probably going to do like farmers markets, that kind of thing. It's like a town square, nice amenities. But the big kicker is this whole thing realistically is 5 miles one way to Bradenton Beach. And because of the way the roads run, you can back end your way to downtown Sarasota. You can shoot to northern Longboat Key. Getting 5 miles or less is unheard of. I mean, Park, especially with this kind of scale. And Wellen Park is considered like the more coastal one or Nocatee. And these aren't 4 or 5 miles one way to the beach. The first phase is going to be about 400 acres of that 1,175. So if you're interested in what this might be, I mean, early and often is probably the move here. But then I think speaking to someone, especially about Western Bradenton, would be more important than most areas because it's not going to look like you think when you get there. But if you have a little bit of a vision, then, it's a weirder version of Lynn Park 4 years before it looks like it does. Once it looks like it does and it looks like it does online, then the opportunity for investment and equity and stuff isn't near as high. This is an interesting one. All right. Another one, speaking of super close to the beach, is a community called Beachwalk by Manasota Key. I've talked about that a few times in the channel. This is kind of an odd bird because you're talking like 2.5, you could golf cart. One of the only ones I can think of in Southwest Florida, this new construction. I don't know if I can think of another one. You could golf cart directly to the beach via this community. But what it does is it kind of came out before. So this is down in Englewood, Florida. And people think of it like it's in the absolute boonies, but it's because of when it was released. This came out before Wellen Park's new district became a thing. And so it was really far. If there's nothing in between Englewood and Sarasota, then people think of it like Englewood when I was growing up. It's like, I mean, you could save money if you get down there, but why the hell would you get down there? And this community, because it came out so early, it's not really grouped in the Wellen Park conversation. Palmyra, Wellen Park Golf and Country Club sit over here. And then Beachwalk's over here by itself by Boca Real. It's not called Wellen Park or any of that thing. So I think people just miss it completely, or they think there's something odd with it or weird with it. And 4 years ago, people thought it was too expensive for what it was. And now if you step back and you say, oh, what is Wellen Park, right? You can be called Wellen Park and there's a census district and all that kind of stuff. But like, we're talking about like day-to-day life stuff. So if you step back and you say, if this was actually called Wellen Park, this is the closest community by far to Lakewood Ranch, this is the closest community by far to the beach. Golf cart thing is super unusual. It's DeVosta Homes, which is a Pulte-owned brand, but it's the resort style ones. There's a restaurant in here, a bunch of different floor plans. I think perspective affordability compared to what else is going on right now. And then you say, I can shoot over to downtown Wellen and use their amenities. It's public. I could go up to downtown Venice. The same things I talked about Palmero's attraction and how they pitch that. Beachwalk might be a better version as far as like location itself. That's more my personal opinion would lie on it, but that's one I would consider as well. And if you're going to mention Beachwalk, I would just throw in its sister community, which was like the main thing people were comparing originally. And that's a community called Talon Preserve. So if you go above Venice Island, where Englewood would be below the island, you have a very similar outfit. You have a beautiful community, weirdly kid-friendly restaurant and all that kind of thing. But this one sits where you get kind of tricky, unique access to 3 areas, 4.6 miles one way to Nokomis Beach, which a lot of people don't really think of day to day if you're visiting, especially. You're 6-7 miles one way from Venice Island, which puts Venice Beach, the same kind of thing, Casperson, the Shark's Tooth, Brohard. But then because you're north of the island, you're also 16 miles one way to Siesta Key Beach. And Siesta Key, the island has 3 beaches, Crescent and Turtle. So Turtle's actually on the lower end, which would be closer to this area once you get the bridge access, of course. But a lot of people, when you're shopping Venice, one thing I'd really recommend is it's basically the Venice Island's the middle of the conversation. So you could say like, all right, Venice Island, which is the downtown and 3 of the beaches. Why would I live above it? Why would I live below it? Or I'm on it or parallel to it, basically. Wellen Park is below it, and that's a reason to go there is because you can't get that full master plan above it. But if you go above it, you're closer to Sarasota as well. So people feel like they don't lose Sarasota as much, but also gain Venice. That's your juxtaposition right there. And Talon and versus Beachwalk is a great way to shop that idea. Okay, let's hop south for a minute and talk about Bonita Springs. The one thing about comparing Sarasota versus Naples, Fort Myers greater area is one thing that the lower part has going for it is if you go above Naples proper, which is like the 1% land, it's awesome, but it's very niche, very expensive. You go above it though, then there's a lot of coastal access west of I-75 that is a little easier to hug water there for affordability versus Sarasota. Because if you get like west of I-75 in Sarasota and you get beyond like Pinecraft and the old Mennonite land and these communities that have existed forever, Ridgewood Acres and all that, and you get anywhere near the water, it's very niche because it's like downtown Sarasota's right there. Siesta Key is so in vogue, just get really expensive. But if you get like Bonita Springs, you get this in-betweener where you see like pricing that you want to get elsewhere. Bonita del Sol, availability aside, it's been around for a little bit, is an interesting one. It's another Pulte brand community. Again, if you find like Pulte and SeaFlower or Sapphire Point, or you look at DeVosta, the Pulte brand, not Centex as much, but Del Webb, once you get an idea of, oh, this is Pulte, you could take that across Southwest Florida, pricing aside based on location, and say, oh, I get what they're doing here. I get how their floor plans orient, how I build, what makes sense for me. That's a great way to learn, too, the value of towns just by seeing one builder price itself against itself in other areas. So there's that. But Bonita del Sol puts you 4.5 miles one way from the Barefoot Beach entrance, because it's all about access, right? You have 3 home collections. They're doing their scenic, distinctive, and echelon here, which is going to put you 1,400 square feet to 3,000 plus. Pricing wise, your base prices start in the mid 4s, and you could go up above $1 million as well. But I think this area is really, it's getting hot. You know, you have Mercado, North Naples below you, Estero and all of that. Florida Gulf Coast made that really popular. I had a lot of friends where Naples wasn't even on the radar when I was growing up. Florida Gulf Coast University was built when I was in high school, but went down there for school, stayed down there. It has a very similar lifestyle to Sarasota, but if you shop both of these, then you know a lot about Florida, really. They both fit in these retirement kind of zones. But this all comes down to, if you're a new construction person, you love that, and you go to the Naples, Fort Myers area, most of it's going to be really far east, where Sarasota wins out in that conversation. But Bonita del Sol is an exception to that rule. All right, so I think it'd be fair to say if you knew like half that information, I think you'd be pretty dangerous, whether you're up here in the search in a macro standpoint, or you're like in the nitty gritty, like trying to pick through the weeds. And of course, please reach out if you are in the weed phase. That's a weird way to say that, but for real-time information, incentive, like new releases, that kind of thing. But beyond that, I mean, I would say if you want to get really on top of it, you know, what's interesting right now is the Quay District. If you're a condominium person, the Quay District is going to be one of the most interesting by far. It's a 14-acre waterfront district on Sarasota Bay at the foot of the Lido Bridge. So you look behind you, downtown Sarasota is there. Marina Jack, lovely marina right there. Ben Franklin Bridge to Lido Key is right there as well. You can see all of it from certain condominiums. And they've done a bunch in there, but they're doing like a huge redevelopment right now. So basically, like they built this one called the Bay. They already had a Ritz-Carlton residence branded one where it was part hotel, part condominium, which we've seen many places. And then they put this Beso one that was also Coulter Urban's brand that developed it, which was like offered kind of affordability from a condominium perspective. But in front of that and behind the other Ritz, they put another Ritz, which is Ritz on Sarasota Bay. It started at like $4 million, beautiful, one of the best views, little like access to the water there as well. And this other one beside it pops up, One Park. It's like 124 units now. They've gone through a couple of different phases of development and restrictions and that kind of thing. But that one's like really high end, really lovely, like a salt spa. It's like really nice looking. So we've done a lot with them. And then they're like looping around. So that district, I'm like, maybe I'll show you an actual map here. But that district, like in front of it, they're putting another little condominium building that's culture urban. And then the Hyatt Regency, which I've stayed at a few times. You might have stayed at if you visited town. It's the hotel that looks dead set on the water with the yachts and the little like luxury townhomes right there. They're redeveloping that. So there's going to be these like Ritz-Carlton Building 2, Ritz-Carlton Building 3, and they're going to loop around. And then they're redeveloping those small 2 condominium buildings on the bay there that have some of the best views in the entire area, but a 9-foot ceiling so people can see over them. And that's going to be a really interesting one because of the location. That's going to be really hard to find. If you want to like rent first, there's a one called a Cordelia, which Lennar, subsidiary of Lennar, the big like spec builder. It's rental only, it's luxury, but it's rental only apartments. I mean, they put like an Ocean Prime restaurant down there, Jack Dusty's down there. Really, it's going to be like, they're trying to do what they've done with the high-end part of Naples. So you could rent for a year or two before doing that if you wanted to experience the whole thing. Golden Gate Point is always in the conversation, super restricted. So all of Sarasota, you can only build 18-story condos for the most part. So even in St. Pete and Miami, like you're going to have these Manhattan skylines. They're going to put 400 units in a building. Sarasota doesn't allow that. I don't know if they'll always be that way, but it does make the aesthetic more attractive to people buying a lot of times. Golden Gate Point only put the 10-story limit. So even if they do large buildings, they split them in 2, like pools in between. One of the best views, entire state of Florida at Golden Gate Point. Very, very niche. Downtown Sarasota's got some interesting projects going on right now. You have the Gallery, you have Soto, which is like another hotel brand. I think it's the Hilton boutique brand that's doing the hotel. North Naples is doing a lot with condominiums. Custom building, I think, is still in the custom building is one of the hardest things to navigate if you want to do urban infill custom. Just thinking of some odds and ends that would be helpful. But one of the best things, thinking like calling a realtor and being like, I want to grab a piece of land and then go find a builder is not near as common as a builder acquiring land off market and then either building their own house and selling it to you or being at a timing where you could catch them. So if you're really looking for custom, I know a lot of them really personally, so we could definitely hook you up. You could juxtapose them all. They're fantastic to work with. Very like family, like concierge environment. One of the best things I think you could do is to get with a builder you like and that you feel confident could acquire you land and let them hunt for stuff, because most of this stuff happens. I sold 4 lots right in. I just went to the builder directly. I was like, what do you want to do? And they can make it make sense for them. So that'd be another thing I'd really consider if you want to be like on Siesta Key, you want to be on Oyster Bay, any of these kind of barrier islands, even in Pinellas County, especially because there's no new construction up there. But yeah, that's what I'd say. So I hope you found it interesting. I'm trying to get this information out quicker to you guys. Please reach out. Like I said, if I can help you in any way, I'll put my contact information everywhere, whether you're buying, selling, and or thinking about investing. And we have a free guides place on the website. So I have a Lakewood rent relocation guide right now, Bradenton, Sarasota, pretty much more there. One of the best things you can do is I send one email every 30 days that is like everything I can think of. It's a manifesto. There's no fluff at all. It's just bullet points, the whole entire thing. I can send you the last copy if you want to see an example, but there's a link here and there's also a link in the description box below where you can sign up for that directly. It's on the free guides part of the website too. You can see a little email box, but thank you guys so much for tuning in and we'll see you tomorrow.